Yo, welcome back everybody. It's me, 918, back at it again to look at more goofycord teams. This time for everyone's favorite shitmon, I mean flavormon, Gyarados. Yeah, Gyarados. Yeah. My apologies in advance. I am very tired today, but this is like the one day this week I can actually probably sit down and do this. So if I sound a little out of it or a little extra rambly, please excuse me. Um, Uh, yeah, it's been a minute since I've actually sat down and done this. I was going to do one for Reggie Rock, but I built a Reggie Rock team, and it feels weird to sit down and rate your team compared to others. If I try to be as unbiased as I can when I do stuff like this, and I think having it being anonymous really helps, but it's tough when your own team's one of the teams, right? So, uh, yeah, yeah, it gets a little tough. But without further ado, I think we should just jump right in because I think there's 15 teams, which is a lot of teams. So it's great to see that many people, building these for this competition. It's really fun to see what people come up with, and I'm really excited. So as a reminder from last time, criteria hasn't really changed. The team has to have good structure to it. Like, it can be fun and creative, and that's obviously the point, but at the same time, I want to be able to bring this to like a high ladder or like a game in a tournament and use it to success. So, not looking for gimmicks, but I am looking for, a quality good team. So without further ado, let's get right into it with this first team here. We've got a Sub-Zap Mixtura T-Wave Fizztara Gyara Champ. Does anyone else say Gyara as the shorthand, but like it's pronounced Gyarados? Like I know it's Gyara, right? I just see the Y. I don't know, man. I think I'm just bad. Anyway, we got Subpass Zapdos, Bulky Fizztar with T-Wave. Uh-huh. DD HP Ghost Gyarados. Okay. Mixrachi, Gengar, and Machamp. Okay, so my immediate thoughts on a team like this is how does this deal with Zapdos in a meaningful way? Because your options as are to either trade with your own Zapdos or go into Jirachi or Tyranitar, which I really don't think want to be eating a T-Bolt off of turn one, especially because Jirachi's, mixed. So it's got a right amount of defense nature. That's definitely not ideal. And T-Tar definitely can eat one, but you're gonna lose momentum because the Zap user is immediately going to switch out of that without even a second thought. So you're kind of already a little off the back foot in that turn one. Um, I also don't like that your rock resists are a mixed attacker and a Machamp, because Machamp is not a rock resist, right? The only fighting types aren't rock resist. You don't want them taking a chip like that unless in an emergency situation. And Jirachi is a really good check to something like Aerodactyl, but you don't want it checking, say, DD Tar or DD Mence. Not to mention, like I said earlier, you're running it as a mixed attacker, so your defenses are already kind of kaput, right? So that'd be my concern, and I'm worried with this team that you're not playing offense fast enough to justify being this defensively frail. I think that's can be a little. It's a tough balance to strike. It really is, and it's. I don't envy anyone for having to try to make that call on a team-to-team basis here, but I think this one does especially struggle with that whole idea of keeping these two things as balanced as humanly possible. Um, I like if you lose like one Pokemon early too, I feel you're just kind of opening yourself up to some late game threat that you really probably don't want to be, set up a. You don't want to be in that position. Yeah. So to summarize, because I kind of rambled a little bit there, my apologies. I think this team is cool, but I think it is very soft to Dragon Dance users. I think it's soft to Zapdos and by extension Jolteon. Um, I don't think this team is too bad in the Skarmory between the T-Wave Tar and the Mixed Attacker. I also don't like Mono T-Bolt Gengar because I feel like the grounds are a little too free, although you do have Will-O-Wisp, so it's not 100% kaput, but or kaput. But that's kind of my thoughts. It's a cool concept, but there's definitely a couple glaring flaws that I see with this team that kind of scare me a little bit. Okay, next team. Beach episode. Oh, I love the beach episode. You know, you can't have a good anime without a beach episode. That is not true. You can't have a good anime without a baseball episode. That is true. Look at every good anime and tell me they don't have a baseball episode. Or I'm sorry, more specifically, every good shonen anime and tell me there isn't a baseball episode. You will be hard pressed to find anything. Um, but every good series needs a beach episode as well. This is just the way it works. And what do we have at the beach today? We have Salamence, we have Houndoom, we have the Egg, we have the Flail Gyarados, and we have no way to deal with the funny Sandman Titar. That is the biggest flaw I'm seeing with this team off of the dome here. You don't have Doug Trio, so I don't see how. And looking at the six too, I don't see how this team, realistically speaking, lures in T-Tar repeatedly to chip outside of just having it summon Sand again. But like Sunny Beam does not work if Sand is summoned like mid-turn. You do have to then take a turn to charge, and you can't switch either, so you're at the mercy of Fizztar pretty bad. Um, yeah, this is tough. And at the end of the day, you're all in a Curse Lax, but it's not even running EQ. So once again, Tyranitar. Tyranitar just stops this team, and that is an unfortunate thing that you hate to see happen to a player because T-Tar, you really do want to see a team like this succeed because it's got funny, it's got your funny anti-sand friends. It's a Sun team, but without like Heracross or Dugtrio or something else to kind of deal with it, you're kind of stuck a little bit. Um, as for the feature Mon, right, Gyarados with Slack, Jolly makes sense. You don't need to run 252 speed on Jolly Gyara, by the way. I that you hit well over your necessary threshold, so I would instead take some of that invest into HP. Maybe as long as your subs, I believe, still need to be divisible by 4, if I remember the calc right for that one. I might be a little off, but you can play with that. I think the other big problem is, without the attack boost, this probably won't hit as hard as you want consistently. So, that's something to think about and be kind of weary of. But, this team is definitely hard hampered by Tyranitar's mere existence. So, yeah. Okay. White Herb, Medi, Pump, Gira, Mag off. So it's Mag off. Okay. 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 Medicham, you immediately lose minus 16 on the scale of 1 out of 100 out of 100 on your grading scale for this team because you did not put 16 EVs into Medicham's HP and or defense, or a combination totaling 68 HP, 8 defense, 12 defense, 4 HP, something like that. Uh, because when you do that, you guarantee that you live Dugtrio or Earthquake from full, and that is very relevant. So minus 16, womp womp. Best you can get is an 84. That's a B. But let's see. Magneton is Magneton. I like my Magneton with a little bit of Spadef, so that way you live opposing Magneton HP Fire. However, that is nitpicking and biased, so I will ignore that. Going on. Metagross with Pursuit and a Brave Nature. I believe it's minus speed. So 32, I believe, offsets the speed penalty. So you're just running mid-speed Metagross. Um, that's fine. I mean, it makes sense. You probably want to get some suit chip on certain things that. Although suit meta is kind of a weird one because it's not very good at getting suit chip on like Gengar. Like I wouldn't use it for that because Gengar can and will probably just stay in Will-O-Wisp, and then it's just like, oh well. I guess it's not that bad then, because if you suit it once, and then it's kind of a dire strait, right? However, it is very good getting Pursuit Chip on a choice locked Aerodactyl, which I think is super relevant because this team is all in on Gyarados at the end of the game to get the dub, and that Gyarados is hasty. Is that plus speed? I believe that's plus speed minus like what, SpDef or something like that. Plus speed minus defense. That makes sense if you're running into him. That's good enough. Let's see. But we'll get to Gyarados in a minute. Outside of that, yeah, pretty certain friends on the Magneton team. We got Snorlax, which is Snorlax, and Celebi, which is Celebi. I have no qualms with either of those per se. I wonder if a different Celebi set would be a bit better. Not saying this one's bad, but I wonder if you want. I wonder if Leech 3 attack is like slightly better. I don't think this team is horrible into like Milo, but it's good insurance, so I won't knock it too much. I will knock Wider Medi because even with the Wider, you're never KOing Salamence. Salamence is just simply too bulky. Um, so yeah, that is a problem that I think should be addressed. Just make it like if you want to get creative with the item, I'd say go Lum because then you could shrug off Zapdos status turn one, which is kind of nice, and you don't have to immediately go to Celebi. And as for the Gyarados, I don't love HP Fly plus EQ as your 1-2 combo because you don't hit Zapdos. Um, and I say that in specific because I know HP Rock is traditionally for Aerodactyl, but you have Hydro Pump for that, and you're chipping it with Pursuit Metagross, which I think is actually a really cool little synergy. I like that a lot. Um, but I think this you will. I don't think it's that bad. I don't like all in on Gyara at the end of the day, and I think that will hamper this team. I think Salamence might be a problem in a late game if you have like a DD Mets in on Celebi. Like you're kind of a little screwed because your mono rock resist is Metagross, and Metagross, even with max HP, really does not want to tank a EQ from +1 Ments, especially because you already know that thing's probably gonna be chipped by the time Salamence comes in and clicks DD. So that's definitely a point of concern. And once again, since you're not running HP Rock, Gyarados can't threaten it. You can only try to int him, cycle it, and that only buys you so much time, right? So I think there's some genuine concerns in the late game versus some of the other late game threats. But I don't think this team is all that bad. I just be worried about if you don't win fast enough, you're hard capping yourself in the number of turns you can hold out before you're in a do or die situation, right? If you lose like Snorlax early and you have to boom it or whatever, and then it's like, oh crap, what do I do? Because now I have to rely on Celebi to tank all of like Zapdos, Charizard, Moltres, Jirachi, opposing Celebi, etc, etc, etc. I don't think it's that bad. And the other thing is, Meta Channel offers like legit nothing bulk wise to your team. And with Jolly, you're not even hitting as hard as you can. And like I said, you're never KOing Salamence from turn one, even with the White Herb. So I'm not really sure what the point of that is. Um, and Focus Punch to threaten the big damage. Although Baton Pass is perfectly fine too. I'd say this team has potential, but I think it's got a couple of pretty big flaws that hold it back. I think if you could find a way to make it so that one of these Snorlax or Celebi, this team could still function without one of these, and instead it's a second DD or find a way to maybe even Metagross just making that simply just agility and then changing the Metacham set a little bit. Maybe that'll help a lot with consistency. But as it is, it's still cool. I really do like the Pursuit plus Hydro Pump, but that's unique. I think that's cool and fun. Okay, we got a Superman team, but with Articuno and Gyarados. Okay, and Curse is interesting to see here. I don't know how I feel about Curse being in that slot where you traditionally want a Jirachi or a Blissey. The other thing is too, you're not running Spin Block, so that's gonna be the other thing. Okay, I see. So you have Swampert in like a Spin Blocker role, and the Blissey Jirachi role you have Articuno. I'm a little concerned about that because Articuno's bulk is great, but I don't trust it over the course of a game, especially because it's multiple just rest talk users, and that's something to be concerned about. And the whole I can't stop rapid spin thing is pretty massive. because that's going to be this entire team's crux of getting residual damage, right? Like there is no real source of real consistent immediate damage on this team, and that's a flaw of Superman as a style. So I'm not going to sit here and knock it for that too much, because I think that's a little you know redundant per se with because that's just the way Superman teams are. But yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's gonna really suck if your opponent brings like Claydol, um, um, or heaven forbid, like a bulky Starmie that just doesn't care about the Zapdos. Like you're gonna get the spin off. I don't trust Gyarados in the back there to get it done when it's Noodle not Gengar, Gyara. I don't trust it to get the job done when it has 16 attack and just kind of bulked out a little bit. I don't think that helps its case in the I am carrying this entire team's offense on my back department. It's still cool to see Articuno because I think Articuno on Superman is actually pretty usable. Having access to Heal Bell on this structured team is very nice, and I see one, two, three different rest users plus Skarmory, which hates eating status, plus Defgon, which also hates eating status. So there's definitely some real merit to it, and of course it's also a rest user, so having that is pretty big. But I'm worried about this team's ability to make pressure if spikes are denied. So that's a pretty big. I'm worried this is a little too passive, but it's still cool. Like I said, it's always fun to see Articuno. Okay, Gone Mag plus Venu. Okay, okay, okay. I see. That is a crazy Metagross spread. That is. You cannot look at that spread and tell me that is not the most like hyper optimized shit to eat very certain benchmarks that I've ever seen in my freaking life, dude. That is insanity. There's a lot going on that Metagross spread that I am too tired to sit down and figure out myself. I'm gonna be so real with you. So I'm not going to. Instead, I'm just gonna say, yeah, that definitely eats a Mixman's Fire Blast, and it might eat a couple of Zapdos Thunderbolts. So it's clearly meant for some lead trading shenanigans. Although I don't think I like leading it for trade shenanigans when your Rock Resist is Metagross. Like you can't rely on Magneton to get the job done, and I definitely don't rely on Choice Band Flagon to get it done. So I mean, there's a real concern there. I don't see why you just don't lead Venusaur instead and leverage its pretty decent speed and access to Sleep Powder to gain a huge advantage turn one. Outside of that, Magneton with some very fat mag. Wowzers, you are not KOing Skarm in one hit, are you, Magneton? And you're probably slower too. No, no, probably not. But wow. Um, but that's fine, I guess. Crunch Suitar makes sense on a team like this because Gengar is definitely a problem. Definitely a massive freaking problem. And then your last two, I don't know how much I trust to get done on a game-to-game basis, but it's definitely not bad if you can remove the Skarmory, which I'm not 100% convinced Mag can do 100% of the time because it's not very invested, but I might just be wrong on that. This team looks really familiar. I know for a fact. Oh, I know. I know for a fact I've seen a team like this that had Venusaur, Magneton. I think it was Agility meta plus DD Mence, DD Tar, and DD Gyara, and that team's awesome. I really like that team. I think Leech brought that team. If I remember right, I don't remember. It was either like him, Giraffe, or Dossie. One of those three. Maybe Lou. One of those group. One of those. But it's a really cool team, and I think it's actually really good. It's very unique, and I think that also plays into its strength. It's very much. I think if that team was structured more like that and just kind of gave into the offense, it would be a lot better. Because as it is right now, I'm worried it's very similar to that first team where the offense, its ability to play offense and defense don't match in a meaningful way. And so you might get stuck in these weird positions where your offense just isn't enough to overcome your defensive shortcomings and vice versa. Because you are kind of relying on Metagross to do a lot of rock resisting and also has that crazy EV spread for trading. And that's a little concerning. And your special check is a very uninvested Venusaur and a Pursuit Tar, which I do not believe are enough. Especially against something like Starmie, for instance. Starmie with a spike down just mauls his team, right? So and most Starmie teams are running spikes, so and that Magneton is going to let a spike get up because it's not KOing because it's a fat mag. So there's some easy fixes you can make this team to make it more consistent and a bit better. But right now in its current state, I'm very worried about how this team plays offense compared to its defense. Let's look next team. CB Gyara Magdoll. Okay. So I will start with the obligatory Magdoll teams are very tough, and to any team that is a TSS team, you are already a little bit playing on the back foot, especially against opposing offense, in which case you are crying a little bit. The second thing I will note about this team is that looking at the six, the Bonk Beetle exists. I don't need to say more than that. The Bonk Beetle simply exists, and it will threaten this team at every given opportunity with a very powerful stab, Mega Horn, or Focus Punch, or Brick Break, or even Rock Slide. Because when your only answer to it is a Choice Banded Mon, I personally would be very much concerned. Um, Beyond that, though, I mean, yeah, this is a pretty bulkier, slower paced Magdoll team. Lead Metagross is always interesting because it either means I'm playing with a Magneton or I'm playing to explode. And either way, you kind of have to respect it. Not that that's really a problem, but it's just something you have to keep in mind. It's also not the most bulked out in the world, and that is something else I'd be slightly concerned about because you are relying on this thing to do some serious checking throughout a game. So, that's something to think about anyway. Beyond that, all in on Suicune at the end of the day, you're gambling on Suicune not getting crit, right? So that's something to consider. And also, you don't have Roar, so you can't stop opposing Pokemon from Calm Minding up with Suicune and playing that game. In which case, you're really one crit away from getting completely screwed. I think Magdoll teams have some serious flaws. And then there's a bold Blissey, which is kind of just here. I don't understand. That's clearly the old Wish Bliss set from just like the Smog decks, and I do think that set's very outdated. Um, I also don't really get the point of it. I guess Wish is nice to keep Metagross going, so you don't have to trade, but and same with Claydol to keep yourself healthy, and I guess Gyarados, but at the same time, like that doesn't slow offense, and it's another target for Heracross to switch in on and tee up on for legit free, right? And no amount of wish is going to stop Heracross from just smoking and rolling, right? Unless you can just wish the funny beetle to go away, in which case, there's other things going on. I'd be sad because I'm a big Monk Beetle fan. But yeah, I think this team's weak to fighters. I think it struggles against other like setup sweepers, mostly other Calm Minders, because you don't have a way to phase and like opposing Suicune looks dangerous, like even off the lead, because even if it's like a lead Suicune that can 1v1 Blissey, you're just completely screwed, right? So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Okay, Dawn, Gyara, Doom, Thief, Doom, Thief, Scarm, Aromatherapy, Blissey. Okay, so this is a stall team, but with Houndoom. I won't lie, I like the idea of Thief, Houndoom. I don't like it as a lead though. I don't know what leads Houndoom's gonna inherently threaten that you can't threaten with like I guess I guess because like I think I'd do Jirachi on this team, right? Or Blissey or Skarmory and get your spikes up immediately. Well, no, probably not Skarm. You want to keep it healthy. So probably Bliss or Prachi. Thief is cool on both Houndoom and Skarmory. I don't really get the idea of putting it on Houndoom though. I don't know what you're trying to lure that. Maybe Blissey, I guess. Which in that case is not bad, but I think Arcanine actually does it better. The Barker is faster and can threaten a bit more, and because it's speed tier, you can actually get a jump on slower Salamence, which is pretty nice. Houndoom also can, but Houndoom doesn't have Intimidate, so you can also check to see if you're faster or not. Lead Barker is actually a very interesting Pokemon. But I mean, it's also nice to have it as a Gengar trade. So you have that going for you as well, because you definitely need it if you're going to run Donphan. You need to have pursuit support, otherwise it's going to get walled to the moon. Aromatherapy on Blissey is very smart on this type of team because you're going to get status and you need a way to deal with it. Plus, you're running Rescura, and defensive Jirachi absolutely hates getting status. It's like its worst nightmare by far. Um, I don't see how this team can reliably. Well, this team doesn't spin block either, so I'm really concerned with how this team can maintain momentum and chip and damage in a meaningful sense. You're not bringing sand, so uh, you're a bit problematic in that regard. I mean, oh, dude, if I just thought about it. If that Skarmory goes down, this team gets Ron flexed so hard. Oh my goodness. I'd be terrified of Curse I don't trust Jirachi and Gyarados to outstall freaking Ronflex, dude. And Donphan definitely isn't either. Skarmory being your only phaser, I mean, I'm sure that Gyarados is really bulky too, so maybe the Suicune matchup's okay, but like, I'd still be concerned, right? Um, and yeah, I mean, you're threatening Clay, like Fortress might be a problem, like 4A teams. Because Foray can spin on that Scarm to the moon. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this team's got some problems if you can't control the way spikes are played. It might be decent enough into like some like faster offenses, but I'm concerned against anything that brings spin or even spikes of their own, because Donphan's spinning ability can be a bit fraudulent if you're unable to remove the spin blocker. And I don't trust lead Houndoom to do that. I'll be honest. I feel like that's immediate turn one disadvantage. All right, next up. uh, uh, what is Nosepass doing here? Okay. Excuse me. Man, I'm tired. Nosepass, I, I don't feel like in good faith I can rate this team because it's got Nosepass and Pelipper, and that's hilarious. And I don't want to do either of those Pokemon disservice by rating them in a serious manner because I feel like I will just tear them apart. And that feels really disrespectful to Nosepass and Pelipper, man. I'm a big fan. I really like that. Nosepass is a funny little niche of trapping Skarmory. Unfortunately, even with Fire Punch, it's still like a 15 and a half hit KO. But it's still funny. And I do like Triple DD, although uh, yeah, Triple DD is fine. I like Triple DD. Obligatory, this team gets absolutely mauled by Starmie. But at the same time, I don't want to rate this team as too serious because it's very funny and it is. It really lives up to the name of. You know what? I'd go as far as say this team is goofy, and for that, I will give it a kudos, a round of applause, and I'm gonna move on. You need redacted to use this. Okay. 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 Um. So it's a stall team, but with a weird Gyarados in the lead, and then there's a Metagross in the back that is kind of there. Okay. Um. How's this team deal with Skarmory in a meaningful way? I guess you taunt it repeatedly with Gyarados, and then Gyarados does what? It just roars, I guess, because there's nothing else it really can do. You thief it maybe with Skarmory. I mean, my problem is like if you're in the middle of the game, like turn like 5 or something, right? Like early game, and you your opponent goes to like their own Skarm, and you go to your Skarm and you get thiefed or whatever. I mean, that's great and all for them, but I'm trying to think how they don't let spikes up and then meaningfully spin when Claydol doesn't have refresh, because I'm really worried about that. I don't trust Blissey to get it done. Not to mention Fortress also exists and it does something very similar, but I think so in a more extreme manner. This might be the first time I've ever seen Fortress. Actually, I've seen multiple teams where I said, yeah, I think Foray of all Pokemon is going to cause some serious freaking problems. And this is another team where I think it will cause some amount of problems because the combination of spin and spike is just such a nasty combination to deal with on that Pokemon, and I don't see a way to meaningfully threat it because Gyarados is not going to do very much without any. It's completely uninvested attack wise, so it's going to hit like a wet noodle. So you're relying on Metagross as your huge damage dealer. You don't block spin on this team, and you don't. I don't know. I don't think this team stalls hard enough to be true stall, and it definitely doesn't play offense enough to be a balance or anything like that. I'm a little concerned about what this team can actually meaningfully do on a game-to-game basis. It's very passive and not in a good way. Um, Thank goodness you have Drillpeck Skarm though and Dugtrio, otherwise Heracross wants to know your location. I don't care about Gyara and how bulky it is. Heracross wants to know your location. Mixments with the Spike Down is an equally similar threatening Pokemon because, in fact, even more so because if it's got an attack investment and can pick up the 2 AKO on Blissey with a Spike Down, you're like super screwed without exploding on it, right? So I don't know. And same goes to Guoktar. Like you have to get Dugtrio in there, but if you're gonna get Dugtrio in there, you're essentially saying I'm gonna sack something to the Guoktar, right? So or just mix tar with like Rock Slide or Ancient Power or whatever to deal with the Gyarados in the lead. I mean, I'd be scared, man. Yeah, let's look at the next one. Oh, excuse me. Cartesian coordinate system. Oh man, reminding me of the Cartesian coordinates and the other coordinate systems. That's why. Why would you do that? It's been too long. Don't do that. Okay, bulky Heracross lead. I'm already a fan. I love Heracross. I think its natural bulk is actually phenomenal, especially on the Spadef side. So it's cool to see a lead Hera that definitely can tank a couple of hits. Although I wonder if that's to hit a physical benchmark. Otherwise, I would say why not invest in Spadef? I think you get more out of that. Let me check real quick on my magic thing called the Pokemon Damage Calculator if this is actually Doug bulk. I don't think it is. No, it's not. Dugtrio is just simply too powerful, and Aquatic's weakness is simply too crippling. But I can dream, right? So let's keep going though, because I actually like the look of this team a lot. Mixed is cool. Dragon Dance is sub DD is cool. Okay, I can get behind that. I don't think I'd run HP Flying. I think HP Ghost is actually fun enough better, or HP Rock, simply because then you're not walled by Zapdos. And I think that is relevant because Zapdos is a threat to this team, but I think if Gyarados is well positioned, it can deal with it in a meaningful way. Beyond that, we have, hey, look at that, Zapdos, and it's super bulked out, so that helps as well. The only problem I have with Zapdos is I don't like Substitute on it. Um, Solely because I think you want this Zapdos to stay healthy so it can tank for you a little bit, use its natural bulk to tank a hit or two. I guess Heracross also fits the role of a Zap check on a team like this. But once again, I ask why is it invested in HP and not Spadef? This isn't a knock. I'm genuinely curious. Is there a physical benchmark that I am missing? Or is it more optimal to do HP rather than SPDEF? I thought SPDEF was more optimal for bulky Hera, but I could be wrong. Beyond that, Claydol is here to spin and keep spikes off. I think that's good for Hera, T-Tar, and Meta. I have no qualms with that. Plus, it provides you with a nice, decent rock resist to go along with your end game agility Metagross. Okay, I'm fine with that. I am fine with this. I'm not opposed to Explosion on this team. I wonder, since you're using Sub Gyara, I almost wonder if Rock Slide is a perfectly fine alternative here. That might be worth it. I like this team though. This team's good. This team's very good. I don't see nothing's immediately popping out at me that says this is a danger. Maybe the Salamence like mix matchup's a little shaky, but that Zapdos is definitely bulky enough to tank it, and DD Ments isn't a problem because that's 1000% DD Ments bulk on Zapdos. Um, Again, this is another reason why I think maybe not HP Fly on that Gyarados, but this is, I mean, like, I think this team is perfectly fine as is. There's a couple of adjustments I would make, obviously, like I've mentioned, but I think this team is actually pretty good. I like this one. Very cool. Long live Bonk Beetle. Guys. Guy, guys. Uh, let bro on the team. He thinks he's part of the squad. Oh no, dude, not Parasect. What is Parasect doing here? Oh no, man. Oh no. Not Parasect. Oh. I'm gonna treat this as the same deal with the Nosepass team. I have an immense amount of respect for whoever built this, but I cannot in good faith review this in the same way I review other teams. I am so sorry. I will. This team is 100% goofy though, and kudos to you. It made me laugh. It's Parasite. Why is it Bullet Seed? I think it gets Giga Drain, doesn't it? Why Bullet Seed? Oh, oh my gosh. Okay. Anti-Jolt Spikes. Yeah, this is definitely anti-Jolt Spikes. I'll say it lives up to the team's name, man. It's got a goober on it. It's got everyone's a goober. They're all goobers. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, this team gets the funny points, and I'm a fan of it because it's funny. It's good to see a fun team like this. It's very how fun. That being said, I'm gonna go to the next team before I rip poor Parasect a new one. Poor Parasect. Oh, they did it dirty. Okay. Featured BL Shitmon time, and it's funny because there's three of the biggest OU Shitmons, and people really hate Gyarados, Cloyster, and Jolteon and say they're the bottom three, which is really funny because they're all still better than Breloom, because that Mon is complete dog ass. I get very frustrated about Breloom. So my apologies to all the probably three Breloom enjoyers out there. It's probably like three of you, right? Put in Crobat tier where it belongs. Anyway. Okay, so this is a Jolt Spikes team with Cloyster as your spiker. That's fine. End Current plus Registeel is a good combo. I have no problems with that. Although I think on a team like this, I think Surf is just better. I don't like the idea of missing your Hydros. I understand the power aspect and how it is definitely needed in some matchups, but you have Spike supporting you. I think you can accept Surf here without being that far in the hole. I think that's fine. Um, Beyond that, I mean, I don't. This team is really weak to Gengar. I don't see how this team deals with Gengar in a meaningful way. Jolteon can't status it. Registeel was completely 1v1'd by it. It outspeeds Swampert and can KO with like HP Grass or Giga Drain. Otherwise, Bolt Beam combo goes crazy here. That's a legitimate concern. 172 Jolly is enough to outrun Arrow plus one. That's fine. And I think that's definitely needed on this team. So otherwise, you're relying on Jolteon. Oh, actually, I don't know how. I think it's a nice insurance, but I don't think it's needed because you have Npert and Registeel, and those both deal with Arrow in a pretty meaningful way. Plus, T-Tar absorbs Double Edge as well in an emergency. Um, Mixments might be a problem if it comes in on any Pokemon not named Tyranitar, I guess. Like if it comes in on Cloyster, Cloyster all it can do explode, and I don't know how ideal that is. Opposing Lex might be scary if Jolteon gets overwhelmed because you're kind of relying on it as your mono spec check. Registeel can definitely tank a few hits though, but I'd be weary of that because you also need Registeel to tank a few hits on the physical side because it's your main way of tanking physical hits. And that is concerning. Once again, the Bonk Beetle shows up and absolutely guarantees itself at least one KO on this team. And that is always a concern because the last thing you want to be doing is feeding the Bonk Beetle. The Bonk Beetle is very hungry, and they're like gremlins. If you feed a Bonk Beetle, it gets nasty. You don't want to do that. Don't feed Bonk Beetles at night, everybody. Um, they will bonk you, and it will hurt. But yeah, I yeah, no, this is a little tough. I I almost wonder if Gyarados should be like a Salamence or something on this team. Or maybe HP Fly is necessary for the Heracross reasons. Yeah, it's a little tough. It's tough to pick coverage on Gyara sometimes. This is why I think Gyara is at its best when it has some other DDer with it. I don't think Jolteon covers the weaknesses the way it covers the defensive weaknesses, but I don't think it covers the Gyara's shortcomings in picking up KOs department. Not the same way some like DD Ments would. I think that is slightly better, but you can't afford to. Or I think DD Ments just in the Gyarados slot might actually just be slightly better too. But I think this seems actually still pretty cool. I think for what it's worth, if you're using three of the four most shitmon of OU shitmons, right? This absolutely is serviceable and will get the job done. I definitely think this is one of the better ways to do that. So credit where it's due. This is pretty good for the constraints of using all of Jolteon, Cloyster, and Gyarados. Spy Kids 2. Spy Kids 2 referenced. Let's go. Okay, it's another Magdoll, but this time with lead Gyarados. And it's this Suicune, we have Snorlax. I must once again mention the Pokemon Bonk Beetle. And I think this time it's a bit more exasperated because your only answer to Bonk Beetle is a Choice Bander, which doesn't gain leftovers. And that is a very dangerous prospect. Um, I'd also be. I was gonna say I'd be worried about Dugtrio a little bit too, but that cell beat 1,000% eats a Doug. It probably eats it with like it probably takes like 62. It probably really freaking tanks. But the other big thing is too, it just doesn't hit very hard back. It probably KOs because Dugtrio is made of paper. Everyday Dugtrio, they don't want you to know this, but the reason you don't see Dugtrio's body is because it's actually in a like a full cast. That's because every morning it wakes up and its bones are made of glass and and its skin is made of paper. Anyway, that's a very over the top SpongeBob reference, but you get the point. Outside of that, I mean, this is just standard Magdoll. I mean, you lose a Pokemon early, or you're playing against offense, you are in for a world of pain. Yeah, I think the Heracross is really exasperated here because you're not getting leftovers, and I don't think Gyara forces that Hera interaction the same way Salamence does. However, you're now covered a bit more versus like Swampert, which means you don't have to trade Snorlax HP into Swampert, and that does have some serious merit because you can just go to your Choice Bank era, eat an Ice Beam or two or whatever, and absolutely threaten the daylights out of it. So no, there's definitely a good reason to run Choice Bank era on this type of team. I just think you, I think it just needs to be a Spikes team, and you run it more like a CB Ments team rather than a Magdoll. I think you get more return value out of that. I'll be honest. I think as is, this is going to suffer from all the downsides of Magdoll, and I don't think Gyara adds enough to the upsides to make it worth it the same way Salamence would. It's a tough one-to-one, but I think like mixed men's is, I think that's the standard on the old Magdal teams for a reason. So, or even CB men's because it hits harder. But even still, I mean, I think you can get away with maybe turn this into like a CB men's style team with some spike support, and I think this team could really cook. So, it's a pretty easy conversion to make, but I think in its current form, it's gonna suffer the way Magdals tend to do. Okay, only these 90s kids. Okay, so we're at a pretty big disadvantage here. I'm not a 90s kid, so I don't understand, I guess. And I'm looking at this team, and you know what? I'm finding real quick that only 90s kids probably understand how this team works because I'm not a 90s kid, and I'm not seeing it. I gotta look a little a little more carefully. All right, lead dunk trio, Traps T-Tar, Traps Metagross. Trying to see why I'm a little confused on why I need to trap those two off the lead. I don't think this team is weak to Metagross or Tyranitar. I think Registeel, the core of Registeel, Gyarados, and Donphan is more than enough to actually deal with those Pokemon with lead Guitar and lead Metagross by itself. I'm a little confused on that. I get the need for Inductrio on a team like this. I just don't see the need for it in the lead slot. Maybe I'm missing some. Anyway, let's keep going. Careful, curse, no boom, no rest, so that Registeel will still get worn down over time. And it can't counter either, which means it's bait to physical attackers. That might be a bit of a problem. Wish Bliss is Wish Bliss, but it's a slightly different spread, and it's still bold. I think you just still go modest. Um, if you run Ice Beam, I think you want to hit as hard as you can. Okay, Sutar with Flamethrower and Rock Slide. Okay. Um, excuse me, my throat's starting to get a little dry from all the massive amount of yapping I'm doing. Interesting Gyarados set. Brave is very strange. Flamethrower and HP Fly is a very interesting. That's that Ho-Oh stab. That's crazy. And then we have the Elephant. I'm a big fan of the Elephant. I like Donphan a lot. I should build Donphan to be honest. It's cool. Yeah, the Sutar is absolutely mandatory because otherwise Gengar is a problem, a massive problem too. Um, let's see, Salamence is fine. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how this team doesn't deal with spikes very well. I think regardless, because it doesn't deal with Skarmory very well. I don't trust Gyarados Flamethrower to get the job done, and I trust T-Tar Flamethrower to get the job done though. So at least there's that. But I mean, also there's Blissey, right? Um, like against Skarbliss, right? I'm curious how this actually meaningfully does with Blissey, because I'm not really convinced. I don't think Dugtrio gets the job done because it needs to switch in. If it's switching on a spike, it might be in danger close territory here. Um, I don't think Registeel deals with Blissey without multiple curse boosts, and even then, I mean, it's going to take some time. I don't think that's a favorable 1v1, especially if Blissey is running T-Wave, right? Um, Bliss on Bliss matchup is Bliss on Bliss matchup, and there's not really much to say on that one. Um, that T-Tar can't threaten Blissey. That Rock Slide is not going to do all that much. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like Calm Mind Blissey might be a bit of a problem to deal with, like or Bolt Beam Blissey or something like that, or just Blissey in general. On top of that, I think Snorlax might be a little tough to deal with depending on its coverage. Like if it's got EQ, this looks tough for this team to deal with it. Um, I don't think this team really puts out a whole slew of offense without. It's definitely a more defensive oriented team, and I think that's fine. But I'm worried without spikes how much progress you're going to be able to make consistently. The nice thing is at least you have Dragon Dance and Rest and pretty bulky Gyarados, so like Swampert isn't going to be an issue. Otherwise, Swampert would be a massive issue for this team as well. And yeah, I mean, even it is if something happens to Gyarados. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the vision or something on this one a little bit, but I'm not sold on it. I get the concept though, so I can't really knock it there, but I'm just not convinced. And finally, last team, El Gallarcico. El Gallasico? It's El Clasico with Gyarados, alright? Alright, I'm not going to sit here and break down El Clasico because that is, a known structure, and I'm not going to. Maybe a quick, it's Clasico. You trade, and you put yourself in favorable position so your opponent can't switch in their threats. You threaten them with the threat of your threats. Um, so the million-dollar question is, usually on these type of teams, it's what Arrow last, and so what does Gyarados add to this team that Arrow doesn't? And I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing what Gyarados adds to this team that doesn't exasperate weaknesses. I think this team is very, very, very advantageous into Zapdos turn one. I mean, like, what do you switch into? What switches into Zapdos turn one, right? Like, you're in a position where your only check to Zapdos is your own Zapdos, right? T-Tar can probably tank one. Gengar might be able to tank one, but T-Tar isn't tanking a second, and Gengar can't hit it for super effective damage. It can just explode, and I don't think that's ideal. Metagross is at least running the Rock Slide, and I think that helps substantially. Um, so that's good, but once again, when does Metagross come in and click Agility safely without taking a T-Wave or another T-Bolt? So that's kind of the concern I'm having. How do you trade with Zapdos without giving up a substantial number of your own Pokemon or HP? And I think that's a real negative on this team. Um, Outside of that, I mean, you got your big five Classico, so I can't really say much about that. Maybe the sets are a little different. I think I'd want Ice Punch T-Bolt on Gengar here. I know Fire and Giga offer some good things as well. But I think with Gyarados here, I think Fire and Giga are a little less needed. 'Cause, I think the steals with Swampert just fine because you have that Gyarados. Um, and it is bulky, so I think you can get away with it. 152 special attack, by the way, is kind of crazy. I wonder what benchmark that is. Everybody's something on Scarm, be my guess. I don't think it really matters though, because once again, the whole Zapdos thing is a problem. But I think Ice Punch is definitely needed on this Gengar here to help subdue that and mitigate the amount you're trading into it. But outside of that, yeah, that's about all I have to say about this team. And that actually wraps up all the teams. Wow, that's pretty good. I think the last one was about an hour long. This one's about 53 minutes according to my little timer right now. So that's a good long video. I'm getting real tired now, so I think now's a good enough time as any to wrap it up here. And I'll go over my quick favorites. There were a lot of really diverse teams. I'm a little bummed, I'll admit, that I didn't get to see more DD spam teams because I really do think that's where Gyarados is able to shine. I think that is its best structure by far. And I'm a little sad that there wasn't too many DD spam teams. I think DD Ments plus DD Gyara is like one of the best ways to use it. So, but I get that's also a pretty well known, and the idea is to be creative. So I 100% understand too. Let's go through a few of my favorites. I think my favorite, uh, probably no surprise here, is definitely this team here, the lead Heracross. I think this team is very um, smartly made. I really like some of the synergies. There's a couple of things I would change about it, right? Most notably, I'd change some of the Zapdos moves around. I don't know how I feel about sub on it. Maybe there's a better purpose that I'm just missing, but I'm just not feeling it. Um, But I like this team, and maybe change the coverage on Gyarados a little bit, but I like this team. I think it's very good. I also was a big fan of this team actually. I think if this team leans into, the aggressive side of how to play it, then I think it can actually make some pretty big waves. Um, I think that's definitely something to think about and look into. For the same deal, where was it? It's like kind of like changing it up a little bit. I think this team, if it wasn't a Magdoll, if you made it like a Gyarados team as like a Spikes team, like a kind of similar to CV Ments, I think this team could be really cool and really fun. I think Gyarados, Choice Band Gyarados could actually really shine there. And let's see, this team was also kind of interesting. I like the kind of the uniqueness of it, but I really do think its defensive utility is a little lacking. And special shout outs to the beach episode because every good show needs a beach episode, and it's funny. Oh, and of course, if we're gonna talk about funny teams, we can't talk about funny teams without talking about. Oh yeah, oh yeah, Parasect making an appearance today. Shout out to Parasect. And Nose Pass. Nose Pass also popped up. Where's Nose Pass? It's yeah, Nose Pass. Um, but yeah, I would say overall, I think this team is probably my favorite. So kudos to whoever made it. This team is pretty cool. Um, I hope everyone who made it this far and watched the whole video enjoyed. I always have a lot of fun going through and looking at these teams. It's always fun to see what people come up with. I hope my commentary and thoughts on the teams were pretty fair and understandable. I'm sorry if I seemed a little mean towards one team or another. Never the intent. Um, and I hope everyone had a good time. Maybe learned a thing or two, or at the very least learned that 918 is a total freaking fraud and a bum. So at the very least, you can take away knowing that I am definitely somewhat of a fraud. Um, but it was fun to record this, and it's great to see Gira get some love. It definitely needs it. So, thank you to everyone who watched this video, and thank you to all the wonderful people who actually sat down and made some teams. And shout out to the staff of the goofycord for hosting another one of these tournaments. It gives me a reason to sit down and make these. So, thanks again, everybody, for watching. Take care. Later.